Hello, in today's video I'm going to talk about a major problem in the food industry that has long existed, but it's more prevalent today, and that's food fraud. Food fraud affects not just consumers but also food manufacturers. Though food manufacturers are often the culprits of food fraud, sometimes they too are the victims, since suppliers can be the culprits of food fraud as well. Though this video will focus more on consumers as the victims of food fraud and what they can do to avoid falling victim to it, this video will touch on food fraud manufacturers as victims too. So, what is food fraud exactly? Food fraud, also referred to as economically motivated adulteration, EMA, is the intentional tampering or misrepresentation of food and drinks with the goal of economic gain or physical harm. This can take on many forms of deception, such as lying about the type of food, hiding ingredients, lying about the quality of ingredients, health claims, and more. It includes deceptively adding ingredients that look like the product being marketed. It also includes diluting valuable ingredients so they appear to be more than they really are. In sum, food fraud is the intentional addition, substitution, tampering, or misrepresentation of food, ingredients, or packaging with the goal of economic gain or harm. From a food manufacturer's standpoint, they become victims of food fraud generally from employees and suppliers. Disgruntled employees may tamper with a food product during processing to harm the company's reputation and standing with its customers. Or suppliers, again, for economic gain, may sell lower quality ingredients to clear out inventory and avoid economic loss. From a consumer standpoint, they become victims of food fraud generally from food manufacturers. To clear out bad inventory without economic loss, food manufacturers will sell expired, low quality, or false products under the guise that they are high quality, fresh, and what they claim to be on their packaging. The intent is usually economic gain. Food fraud dates back to 4th century BC in Greece and Rome. However, it's grown significantly due to the robust global supply chain. With growing competition and customer demand, many factors have led to higher rates of food fraud. A big one being economic motivation. With competition to keep prices low, some manufacturers and suppliers have opted to deceptively provide low-quality products under the guise of them being high quality at a discount. Others are more complex supply chains, which open doors for fraud to occur at different production points that are challenging to trace. Lack of product transparency, where information about a product's origins, processing methods, and handling are unknown and difficult to obtain. Market demand, where consumers seek certain products at affordable prices, motivating manufacturers and suppliers to find ways to meet those demands. Technological advances, which allowed manufacturers and suppliers to exploit these tools to create misleading packaging and labels, and limited resources from regulatory agencies to track and monitor food fraud incidences. The dangers of food fraud may be obvious to many, especially to consumers. Mislabeling or selling food and drink products with hidden ingredients could lead to unfavorable health outcomes, including death. Some examples of this are allergic reactions to hidden ingredients, foodborne illnesses, and contaminant exposures. It can also violate consumers' religious and ethical beliefs, such as some consuming a product believed to not contain pork, but that actually does. Ultimately, this can damage a food company or manufacturer's reputation, not only resulting in great reputation and economic loss, but company dismantlement. Consumers can ultimately lose confidence and trust with a particular company and related companies. This distrust can lead to loss of confidence in the food industry and its regulatory systems as a whole. The result of that can be less participation from consumers in the food industry and loss of revenue from companies, manufacturers, and suppliers. On a lesser-known account, food fraud can lead to unfair market competition for manufacturers, where fraudsters are able to sell seemingly quality products for less, distorting the consumer's view of fair prices. A fraudster who deceptively sells a fake product for less will harm companies that are selling legitimate products for more because that is how they can make a profit selling a quality product. There are various forms of food fraud. The major ones are adulteration. This means lowering the quality of products with cheaper ingredients, often to increase volume, change appearance, or cut production costs. Though the quality is low, manufacturers charge more for low-quality goods with the idea that they are high quality. Counterfeiting. This means replicating a popular product brand, such as its labeling, to make consumers believe they are purchasing a genuine product. Mislabeling. This means placing claims and favorable information on a food or drink product's packaging that doesn't correspond to what the product actually is or contains. This includes claims of nutritional content, organic or non-GMO certifications, potential allergens, even country of origin. Tampering. This means interfering with the production of a food product, such as adding harmful ingredients or substances. This can also include repackaging or relabeling an expired product to a new expiration date so the product appears fresher than it really is. Substitution. This means replacing a quality ingredient with another low-quality ingredient, which is never mentioned on the label. Common products that are at a high risk for food fraud are meat, such as adding fillers and additives, often to increase volume and weight or extend shelf life. Another issue is species substitution. This is when an often cheap meat species is labeled as premium meat or another higher quality meat species. And then there's the illegal importing of meat from unregulated channels. Honey and syrup, such as mixing honey and syrup with cheap sweeteners like corn syrup or cane sugar. Oil, such as diluting expensive oil like extra virgin olive oil with cheap vegetable seed oil, but selling it as pure for a higher price. Seafood, such as substituting less expensive species of fish for a more expensive species. Also, when the seller adds ice to frozen seafood to make it heavier when selling by weight. Juice, such as adding citric acid, sweeteners, and water, but claiming the juice is 100% grape juice or orange juice. Sometimes the manufacturer will mix expired juice stored in contaminated conditions with fresh juice to hide the low-quality juice. And spices, such as bulking up an expensive spice with plant material like stems, or adding dye to give a certain spice a color associated with quality. This can be dangerous since some dyes are lead-based or industrial-based. As mentioned, food fraud is not new and has been going on for centuries worldwide. However, with advancements in technology and globalization, opportunities for food fraud have increased. Two popular cases of food fraud and its effects on consumers are that of contaminated infant formula and peanuts. In 2008, a Chinese manufacturer added melamine, a man-made chemical commonly used in plastics and that has a high nitrogen content, in infant formula to give the illusion that the formula was high in protein. Of course, this was never mentioned on the label or to consumers, so the result was many babies experienced kidney failure. News reports stated this incident led to over 300,000 illnesses, 50,000 hospitalizations, and at least 6 deaths. And in 2009, the Peanut Corporation of America's CEO approved the shipment of peanut butter that was contaminated with salmonella, which she was aware of. The result of this fraudulent distribution resulted in 9 deaths and over 700 illnesses. The CEO was arrested and the business was closed. Many estimate, including the Consumer Brands Association, CBA, that food fraud cost the global food industry around $10 to $15 billion annually. The Food and Drug Administration estimates that food fraud may actually cost the global food industry $40 billion annually. In truth, it's difficult to know the true number food fraud costs the industry. This is because most food fraud is hidden. Food fraud is designed to be undiscoverable. Nevertheless, there are programs set in place to fight food fraud and charge those involved, such as taking legal action, enacting fines, and regulatory sanctions. In some cases, companies found to be involved with food fraud can lose their business. Government agencies realize that combating food fraud will rely on imposing strict compliance to food safety regulations and establishing a traceability program that allows for full transparency. Overall, achieving adequate regulation and surveillance is still a work in progress, since there are more food operations than agents to aid in those efforts. It's not easy to safeguard yourself from food fraud because there are many tactics fraudsters use, with some difficult to detect from a consumer standpoint. For instance, unless you're familiar with the differences between horse meat and beef, it can be difficult to know if a producer who sells beef is maliciously selling horse meat under the beef label. Nevertheless, there are things you can do to reduce or minimize the odds of falling victim to food fraud. You may even be able to avoid being a victim altogether. Some ways to avoid food fraud are, first, purchase your food close to home, which means within your neighborhood, city, state, or country. The closer your food is sourced, the greater chance you can learn about the suppliers and producers of your food. In building a relationship with those who create the food you consume, you can understand their processes as well as motivations and ethics for producing food. This may mean sourcing your food primarily from local farmers and farmers markets. Second, start questioning the food you buy. This means asking yourself questions about a product you're about to consume, such as the product's appearance and if it's familiar of what you expect, the company and if you deem it as one that's ethical and trustworthy, how you obtained it. Was it online or in person, where you could ask the seller questions, examine the product, and assess its legitimacy? This also includes comparing price in regards to raw ingredient accessibility. This is not to say that a raw ingredient in short supply can't be sold cheap, but often if something is scarce and there's a high demand for it, the product that contains it won't be cheap. Third, assess the conditions where you purchased the product. This is especially the case if you purchase the item in person. Does the environment look clean and orderly? Is everything labeled properly? And is staff helpful and available to answer questions? Fourth, if you suspect the company or supplier is involved in food fraud, contact the FDA Consumer Complaint Coordinator for your state to report it. You can also submit a MedWatch online form to include information about product quality, labeling, packaging, and any other markers of food fraud. Ultimately, knowledge is key. Getting to know companies and brands will minimize your chance of facing food fraud. A lot of legitimate companies are now becoming transparent about how they source food, their values, and even what led them to start their companies. Some will even provide testing results and certifications they've received, thus emphasizing their trustworthiness and legitimacy of products. Even researching the history of companies can shed light on the likelihood of them being involved in food fraud. If a company has a clean history, chances are they will want to stay that way. So the bottom line is to be vigilant of where you obtain your food, all the way down to how the food looks. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I clearly explained what food fraud is and what you can do to not be a victim of it. If you found this video valuable, please like, comment, and share so others can learn more about food fraud and discover these tips on how to combat it. Subscribe for more whole food and nutrition videos, and until next time, take care.